And we are live. Hi everyone, this is our second DataMeet Hangout, and I'm Nisha Thompson. You cannot see me because my camera is not working right now, but we are happy to have the Pune chapter join us and talk about their work making some village shapefiles open and available. And I'm joined with Craig, Dev, Namita, Nikhil,
Hi.
Sajid is here from Geo Bangalore, and we're going to have a really good conversation about what it takes to make geospatial data available. So just starting out with some announcements. There is a Geo Bangalore tomorrow at the Mapbox office. They're covering there's been a lot of events around state of the map around the world. So they're going to be covering that and talking about some of the exciting conversations happening there. Another big thing that happened in the last month is the International Open Data Conference in Madrid. And there was a really big group from India that went. I was there, Sumandro from CIS was there, Sajid was there, Naveen from Graminer, the DataKind Bangalore guys, Gaurav, his partner, and who else was there? Oh, Faculty Rakesh was there, Dilip from Telangana. So there was a lot of representation from the open data community. I was on a panel that talked about gender and open data, and we talked about how to make the open data movement a little bit more inclusive, and also how to get more data regarding women in the lives of women, especially regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm going to be writing a blog post about it soon. And then we had a panel that was organized by Sumandro around data-driven, demand-driven data strategies for open data. It was Rakesh from Faculty, Dilip from Telangana, Banu from the National Campaign for People Rights Information, and I were there to talk about how to actually make data available that people want and use that to keep the government more accountable. It was a pretty good panel. I think all of these have been recorded, so we're going to put up some of the videos and have blog posts up hopefully next week on datameet.org. So I think that covers the major announcements on my end. Craig and Nikhil, do you want to take it forward?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Nisha. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nikhil, and this is Craig. Craig, maybe you can take forward, just cover Pune group, something if you want to put it something. Otherwise, I'll just start with the map something.
Should I briefly introduce the exercise on the whole?
Yeah. If you can.
Okay. So to start with, there are a few of us in the Pune chapter. The Pune chapter meets about once a month, sometimes once in 2 months. There are a few of us in the Pune chapter who are very involved with different kinds of work in rural development. So especially when we saw these few different data sets cropping up related to villages, census, village data, then maps that were available earlier in PDF format, made available by the Remote Sensing Agency of Maharashtra, village boundaries of Maharashtra. When we saw these different kinds of data sets, we thought that it would be really useful if we could make this data available and open in different forms so that a whole lot of different people could use it. And there are many different use cases that we thought about, because if you hear about journalists reporting on rural development, if you hear about different NGOs working in rural development, the level or the unit at which they work is the village. or in some cases the Gram Panchayat. So in each of these cases, the data we figured would be really useful, and it will give you a whole different level of insight into the work that you're trying to do, whatever it is, whether you're a researcher, whether you're with a non-profit, or so on. So we thought that okay, let's see how we can go about this and come up with maps. Yeah, come up with maps to visualize and understand this data better. So yeah, that's for context. Nikhil, you want to say anything?
Yeah, that just I've been working. I had been working in maps regarding Pune, and then Craig got hold of me, and then we started working on something or the other, and then they came across this village data. And what's been exciting in this is not so much about taking the data. Oh, this is the official data, and let's present it, but rather to go through it, to trawl through it, and to find where the anomalies might be, the problems might be. And then to document them. So I'll be just doing a brief coverage of that. I'll be sharing my screen later. But yeah, Craig, if you want to add something more. Is it hanged up or something? I can't hear anything. Hello?
No, I'm there. I was muted. Um, so yeah. Initially, to talk about what data sets we had or what our starting point was, the initial raw data that we had is the district census handbooks published by the Census of India, and these are 2011 data, and there are a lot of different variables. So there are about more than 300 different variables which provide data at the village level. So this is across different sectors. So you have demographic data, population, age groups, whether it's CST. You have water and environment related data, health related data, uh, and so on. It's just a lot of different kinds of information. But if given what we were trying to do, we initially had these PDF maps available of village boundaries, and we thought, can we digitize those maps? Right? It seems like a humongous task because Maharashtra has about like 40,000 plus villages. But then later on, we also came across another source wherein we found the village boundaries, but these were already digitized. They will tell us about this in a little while. So then PDF maps, we also now had these shape files showing village boundaries of Maharashtra, and even this data set wasn't perfect. There were issues relating to village codes, relating to duplicate values, to missing values, and so on. But we had the core elements of what we needed to get started, so to speak. So was that can we make this data available in as many different formats as possible? So the couple of things that we came up with were that we need web maps because those are very accessible with limited time or attention put in by different people. So you wouldn't have to download an application. You can just access all this data that you need directly in your web browser. But then besides that, we also wanted to come out and publish the maps and the data um, in its raw form, so that people who then wanted to go beyond web maps can take the raw data, import it into the desktop GIS application, analyze it there. Besides that, we also wanted to come up with publishing our scripts that we were using to check errors and issues that the data itself had. So since some of us were comfortable with using R, we decided that let's go ahead and work with an R and publish those scripts. And besides, so the product that we would come out with, along with the R scripts, were a lot of metadata about files themselves, so that someone coming in, someone who wanted to use this data for the first time, wasn't overwhelmed because there was so little metadata available in the first place. So that's how we decided to go about it. We held a couple of meetings in September, which were very well attended. Like about 20 people came to each of those meetings. Groups to work on different aspects of the code and the web maps and the desktop maps and so on. So then, yeah, I guess Nikhil, you can talk about where we are now and what the issues are.
Sure, yeah, I'm gonna try and do a screen share, so you guys just tell me if this is working or not right now. Nice. You'll have to tell me because I can't. You have to tell me audio verbally because I can't switch back to that window right now.
I
Otherwise, I'll
can
stop
see
this.
it. I can see it, Nikhil.
One person had to confirm. Okay, where is this? Okay, yeah, so we started off with a pretty large shapefile that was covering the whole landmass of Maharashtra. Yeah, I hope you can see it. It's looking crazy over here. Can you guys see the Maharashtra map?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is and these are just color coded by the taluka code number and stuff. So this is just to give you a basic overview of we have pretty much the entire landmass of Maharashtra and thousands of villages, the village boundaries and all. They seem to have the people who made this data set seem to have done a good job of covering the entire landmass. So even places that were not villages were the boundary has been drawn, it has been put in as a water body or a forest area or something like that. So then we started looking at comparing it with the census data. That shapefile had its attributes, like every shape had a census village code, IP code and other things. So when I compared it with the census data, I found that there's a 97.7% match. Most of the, you can say, like yeah, over 90, almost 98% of all the shapes that are there in the shapefile have a census data entry in the district handbook. But there are some that are left out. So that's one avenue for exploration. What are these things that are left out? Now, for example, when I started going to on the census side, when I started looking at these 400 villages, now the name resettlement. So there might be resettled villages that haven't been geolocated yet. So that's something that somebody could explore. In the shapes itself, like while analyzing the shapes, we found that there were several repetitions of codes and things like that. So one such case I'll show here as an example is the picture on the bottom is the PD is a screenshot from the PDF of that taluka, and the one on top is a screenshot of the shapefile. So the shapefile has 4 shapes next to each other, all named go array, but they're all exactly this. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep going ahead till somebody interrupts me right now. All right, just for a few moments. Yeah, so there was quite some confusion going on at what do we do with this, because there are 4 different shape files pretending to be 4 different villages, but it's actually just one village, and there are several cases like this. But at the same time, there are several other cases as well. So then we finally came to this that let's not distort the shapefile data. Like let's not distort this data too much. Let's keep it as it is. But just in the last few weeks, I've redone the shapefile. I've added a new column and I've assigned some unique codes to all the repeating villages, and we could take that forward. Okay, I'll just scroll to this like an example. I listed down all the talukas the PDFs that we had from the MRSAC website, the Maharashtra Remote Sensing website, and then I just as a sample, I coincided, like I geo-referenced them with the shapefile taluka, and most of them are matching quite well. Yeah, I just scrolled up over here. This is the PDF of Mahabaleshwar taluka, and then over here the Mahabaleshwar taluka is superimposed on top of a shapefile. And in many of these places, some villages are here or there. Like some villages in the shapefile that are there in one taluka are supposed to be in the other one as per the census data and as per our PDFs. The thing like that. Then we had an issue of repeating village codes, and then when we went and saw some of them, they're actually cities now. So there we also got this kind of information that maybe in 2001 they were villages, and by 2011 a city has kind of eaten up several villages surrounding, and then it has like so many of those parts have been just assigned one village code, whereas it's actually they have been given the names as municipal corporation, city limits and stuff. Then this map with some polka dots. I don't know if the audience will be able to see it over Maharashtra. It's all the, I think all the blank village codes highlighted, or all the repeating ones. I think this is all the blank ones, and the next one is all the repeating ones. So it's pretty much sprinkled all through the landmarks. You can say that uh, there are several village codes. There are several shapes over here which have repeating village codes which are not uniquely coded, and which need some work. And like many of these cases are not similar to each other. We might have to go case by case basis. So I prepared a tracking sheet for that. So I'll stop sharing here. Okay, I'm gonna jump now to the tracking sheet. But just before that, if any of you have any questions, or if you want to tell me that the last 10 minutes was all like you didn't see anything and it was all waste or something, you can tell me right now.
Nikhil, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So I just wanted to thank you for showing all of this, and so basically, you're talking about a pain which is very close to my heart, because not only with census data, but with any other data, especially in the spatial world, we face these issues. So what I'll just like to point out is that, yeah, this data is not perfect, but it's much better than what we have right now. So I think we are still light years away from having something like the Tiger shapefiles, which are there in the US for census data. But given that we have absolutely no data today, this is at least something. So
this is a lot, yeah. Compared to that, this is a lot.
Right, yeah, and this is something which people who are just from the IT world or data world might not realize, but very often data is imperfect. So if you have to take that with that kind of perspective, because otherwise, if you just try to do any analysis hoping it's perfect, then you'll get into a lot of trouble. So yeah, just a caveat that you need to look at this data with a little bit of pinch of salt.
Yes. Thanks for putting that in there. Okay, so I'm gonna jump quickly to the just a spreadsheet, and I hope I don't take more time there. Wait, I'll just where's my spreadsheet? Yeah. So I created a tracking sheet for making sense of this imperfectness and to even kind of delight and celebrate in it. Wait a sec. Okay, it's jumping now to the next window. Are we there yet? Can you see it? Okay, tell me yes if you guys can see a big white screen and you can make out anything.
Yeah, I can see it.
But let me now try and zoom in over here so you guys can see it better. Okay, yeah, so this is the big fat spreadsheet. I created a Google spreadsheet to just start tracking all these things that were coming up, and ended up having several sheets in one, starting with the README. This on a public link, like I've openly published this spreadsheet. For editing, you have to ask me, of course, but you can, anybody's free to comment as well as like go through it. We've put links of all the data that we have, so people can actually just download stuff and get started on their own end from here. Is there tools that are there, what are the data sources are, and the Hackpad, the documentation here, there, quite some stuff. Then for web interface, this is where me and Namita were then discussing about what all features we can bring in, and there are a lot of other things that have come up, including a DIY version that I'm thinking about that I haven't really shared with all of you guys yet. I just shared it with Namita. That we might have a problem with just publishing this data and giving the census data with that, whereas people in the NGO sector don't really just only want to do census data visualization. They also have their own data sets. So for example, the census of India does not record the number of farmer suicides that have been happening in Maharashtra, but some other NGO might be recording that. So it might be useful. Hello? Sorry, yes, I'm Manu. So it might be useful for them to have a tool by which they can visualize it themselves. Like we can provide them the village data and all that tools, but they should be able to upload their own CSV files or data so that it then gets visualized in a spatial way. So okay, let's see in the future what we can do with this tools. Then there's a PDF taluka listing thing where I listed each and every one of the sub districts. There's about 350 and like the PDF links of where to get them, and then columns for comparing them with the shapefile. So is it matching or not? Have you geo-referenced the shapefile or not? Are the talukas matching, boundaries and stuff? So I think Nisha had asked this question, right? Like how are the boundaries matching? So yeah, this is a tool for going taluka by taluka and finding out for sure whether the boundaries are matching or not. And while doing that, starting with a few talukas, that's where I came across some of the anomalies whose screenshots I shared earlier. This would be a good exercise, again, looking for volunteers, because this is the same thing to do 353 times. So it would be nice to have 353 people to do the same thing in a short time. Things in that. Then I made a basic sheet of repeating village codes, but I put a note over here that I've just created this list using some web tools, copy paste, some jugad ways. A very nice way is by using R, the programming language R, for data mining and creating scripts to take out these unique values, unique code value pairs and stuff like that. Craig has explained it quite well earlier in our meet that if we do this well, if we have proper scripts and everything, then this exercise can be replicated for other states with very little effort. So people don't have to reinvent the whole codes and everything. You can just do it together. So here I put in what village codes are there and how many times they are repeating in this data. And then just put columns of are you advising us to merge this, because like if you're saying that they're all together and in the PDF it's all one village, yes or no, and things like that. And okay, I'll quickly go now to error and anomaly tracking. Yes, we keep coming across, while we're going through this and checking something else, we keep coming across some of the other anomalies. Like there were some village codes with without a village name. There were some village names without a village code, and those I could easily look up in the census data and find the right thing. So those small corrections can be done. Then there is one case of a comparison between the PDF and the shapefile and the census data between these three sets to figure out, okay, which villages are there in the PDF, but in the shapefile it's actually two villages, or things like that, like where the boundaries are changing. And then there's one recorded case of Osmanabad and Yavatmal fighting over 96 villages. and it's kind of like colonization. Yavatmal is far away, and it has in the shapefile it is having 96 villages that are supposed to be in Osmanabad. And then in the census data, when you look up, you find out, okay, these villages have been given the wrong IP code, the wrong this taluka code, and because of that, everything is looking distorted. So yeah, as and when we find things like this, I hope that we do document these. Why? Because if we're dealing with government's official data right now, and we can find these problems, I'm hoping that facing other legal issues and all, it can be a constructive process by which the stuff that volunteers do over here can go and help the actual government data itself. They can do the corrections over there. So I think some people over there might actually be very glad that somebody found out these errors, because they are looking at 48,000 shapes. actually points out to them, sir, one village ka code thoda galat hai, and things like that, then actually I think they would be happy to get to fix those errors very quickly. Then I just put the census data here without the extra columns, but just all the villages and all to look up and other things. And assembly constituencies. This is a blank sheet, and I had stop sharing here, and I'll. Yeah, guys, please do interrupt me if I'm going the wrong way or something like that, or if there's too much other things coming.
I think
Okay,
whenever you're done,
I'll
you
just
can
jump.
Namita can jump in and talk about the web maps also, because that's
Yeah. I'll just finish with this, and then I'll. This is the last part. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Two last parts. So one thing I want to take it forward with is the assembly constituencies. So Maharashtra has 353 talukas, but 288 MLAs. And so it's not a one-to-one match. And right now, all we have is a messy PDF, which tells which assembly constituency has which talukas, and it's just saying, oh, part of this taluka, part of that taluka. So it's a big, right now it's a challenge for us in how to find out like in geospatial terms exactly which villages are falling under which assemblies.
Nikhil, yeah, just to let you know, we also have the assembly constituency boundaries on the DataMeet repo. So we can also
but those are very much simplified. So when I render it on these maps, like there's a very big one straight line cutting 100 kilometers across.
Yeah. That is it's quite generalized,
like
but yeah. And in fact, if you actually go to the detailed delimitation, whatever report or something, they actually have on the left side of this particular river up to north of this particular.
Okay, then let's open that up, right? Then let's put that on the Hackpad, and let's work.
Yeah. Sure.
So this way, like the end result of what I want to do here is like what I would like to see is when a news comes about a village, there should be an immediate lookup of who is the MLA that's representing that village. What's the political accountability, right? I mean, like, that's what. I mean, if we're in a representative form of democracy, then who is a person who's representing this particular area? Suicide thing, like we keep having these big statistics, but what if we got a news like, okay, so and so villages have largest amount of farmer suicides, and they are represented by XYZ sitting in the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly, and they have spent this much funds on the LED constituencies. And so for journalists, this would be, as well as for opposition parties, this would be very ripe material for like fixing political accountability. So let's have that. Like for every village, we have to know exactly who's the MLA, what's the constituency, how is the political accountability being mapped. And then finally, I just came across this source day before yesterday, Mahabhulek. It's a land records portal for Maharashtra. And okay, there is a survey number, gut number. It goes very much inside villages. There is no geospatial data here, only records. But there is something that we can get from here. Of all the districts, inside every district, all the talukas, that's the sub-districts, and all the villages inside those talukas, as per land records data. So here we have, and it's all in Unicode Marathi, whereas the data says that we have tricked so far. So there was something started by Tej of this geospatial information we should have it in the native language as well. So this is a good source for doing that. Plus, when I looked at the code of this, it seems well keyed in. They are keyed in according to some village codes, some district codes and all. So we can use some data matching stuff and all, match the following play, and we can actually take in this Unicode Marathi versions of all the names of all these villages and all, as well as see over here what are the mismatches with them. I think right now, from what I've seen, they seem to be running on 2001 village codes, the land records data. So, but yeah, there seems to be good potential over here for us to do that. So yeah, this was just a very brief snapshot of what all is possible here. I'll jump back to the main screen now, and I'll hand it over back to you guys. And I also have to leave in a short time. Sorry for talking. Yeah, thanks. Over to you.
That was very useful. Definitely the land records thing also, which we discovered a little while back. that'll be useful if we can somehow figure out how to integrate that. Namita, you there?
Yeah, Craig.
If you want to talk about the process of developing the web maps, and if you could share screen alongside.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna share my screen.
I'll mute myself now.
The top left, there is this arrow pointing to the right side, green color. That's for screen share.
Yeah. So I've shared my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Not yet.
Okay, there could be some latency. So let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so as Craig and Nikhil already spoke about what we're doing and what kind of data we have, we thought there could be different versions of visualizing this data. So this is the part that I worked on. We've created web maps. I'll try not to get very technical, but I'll just give you a basic of what technologies I've used. So this is basically done in JavaScript and HTML, CSS. And for creating the map, I've used leaflet.js to render the map and create the choropleth. And the base layers are from Mapbox. So web maps, as you know, they speak more visually, and it's easier to navigate and compare data at village level. You can drill down and see different villages and zoom in. All that kind of a thing is easier using web maps. So this is what we have. This is a basic version. There's a lot of other things that can be done, but I'll just walk you through what we've done right now. So here, if you see my screen, we have a district dropdown where you can select different districts. So if I select Pune, it'll load the Pune GeoJSON. So these GeoJSONs have been split district-wise, which Nikhil did for me. And the CSVs have also been split district-wise. So when you load a particular district, it loads the corresponding CSV for that district. So the Pune district GeoJSON has been loaded, and you can see different villages here. You can zoom over the different areas, and on the right, you can see the village attribute that the choropleth is made for. So this is for the total population of village, and you can zoom in, you can hover over the different villages to see the values. You can also, there's also you can change the transparency of the choropleth layer so that you can see the base layer behind this. And you can also change the base layer from the top right toolbox. So right now it's Mapbox Lite. You can have Mapbox Streets or Satellite with labels. And on the left, you can search for a village. So if I say, so this basically searches for a particular name in your GeoJSON and highlights that area. So that's the village search feature. And on the left, you see different attributes for the village. So you can choose an attribute and look at the choropleth for that particular attribute. So if I say total households, it'll load the household data. So if you can see on the right, it's total households, and you can again zoom into and look at the different villages and their data. On the right bottom, you have the legend. So this for different attributes, you'll have different legends, different ranges. And below that, you have a link to the census data, so you can actually go and see the raw data from here. Craig, have I covered everything? That was a very quick one, so if you have any questions, you can ask.
Maybe you could go over the new features that we're planning to put in. I had listed them down in the README file, more or less.
Yes. So, okay. Can you see this? I'm sharing the GitHub README. Can you see this? Or will I have to share it again?
No, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So do you want to go through this?
So Wait, let me scroll down a bit. So we've just put in basic instructions in the README on how to use the web map that Namita covered. You can also download the same data and use it on your desktop GIS. That in fact allows you to analyze more districts at a time. So you don't have the limitation of a web map, which is you have to display a limited amount of data. In this case, because the web page itself, if you try to download more than, if you try to load and view more than one district at a time, the web page takes a lot of time to load. But there are these limitations that you wouldn't have on your desktop GIS. Namita, could you scroll down a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, go down to the desktop GIS section and below that also. I think there's invitation to collaborate below this. Yeah. So yeah, as Namita explained, a lot of the features that we put in to the web map are still, the web map is still at a very early stage of development, but there are many different ideas that we have for ways that we can improve on it. And we invite people with the skills and the ideas to pitch in and help us out and make the map, make the product even better. Some of these, some of the limitations yet ways to display categorical data. For example, we have chloropeth maps right now, which display on the web maps, which are good for numerical data, but there are many variables in the data set which are also categorical. And there are issues with displaying those. Then we also want to, in the effort to make the data more open, just download button just directly on the web map itself, so that people who are not programmers, people who are not familiar with the GitHub interface, could directly select a variable, select a district, and just hit download and download just that data as a CSV for their variable of interest. We also need help from people who are willing to say go through the variables, the census variables, and limit it to the most relevant ones, the most interesting ones, because right now there are more than 300, and many of them become repetitive in some sense. So want to put in a way for users to report errors on the web app itself. So if they're scrolling through the district, so that to keep the process as simple as possible, is there a way that they can in some checkbox and in some text box on the web app itself say that okay, this is an error I've spotted. Then yeah, that was more or less what I thought of. What else do we need to go into? I also want to share one use case. I'm gonna, Namita?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm gonna share my screen for a minute.
Okay, I'll stop sharing mine.
So I wanted to share one use case, one way in which we've already been able to use the data for some of our work. So I work with this non-profit organization, and we do research on water-related issues. So in the last summer season, which was one of the most severe drought seasons in a long time, we visited the Marathwada region, that is Latur and a couple of surrounding districts. see, I think, can you guys see the map? Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Have you shared your screen? I can still see Namita's.
I've shared mine.
I can see your screen, Greg.
Yeah, I can see.
I can.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. So this is basically village boundaries just for the Marathwada region. And this, the data that you're looking at here is just population of each village. So the darker blue colors are villages with higher population. Brownish colors are towns. So I'm going to narrow in just to Latur district right now. So what I was visualizing there for Marathwada was census data, but for Latur we were actually able to integrate a different data set altogether. So what you're looking at here is data on groundwater levels. Sorry, not groundwater levels, groundwater development in Latur district. So in groundwater terminology, they say critical, which is red for villages that are heavily dependent on groundwater. Then they also say semi-critical for villages that are this lighter orange color, for villages that also are dependent on water, but little less so. And if you take a look at this data set that we got, this is not census data, this is from the Central Groundwater Board. Village codes that corresponded to the village codes in the shapefile that we have. And it also had data on which villages are overexploited, critical, semi-critical, and so on. So we could tell that on our recent visit, we could actually narrow down to which villages we needed to visit, which villages we would therefore be of interest, because these are heavily groundwater dependent and this is a drought season. So we wanted to actually figure out how these villages coping in the current drought. These villages to other villages. So even if you take a look at this groundwater level, groundwater exploitation data, and you compare it with the cropping data in Latur district. So this is, if you take a look at the blue, that's still an issue we have to figure out. Blue is villages that have no data under the cropping section. But the red is villages that grow sugarcane as their main produce. Orange is villages that grow soybean. So these areas you see here on the top left and bottom center are villages that are irrigated from nearby reservoir projects. So one way in which we were able to take a look at these two data sets together is we kind of saw an overlap between villages that were heavily groundwater dependent and villages that were growing these water intensive crops. So not only was it the case that these villages were being irrigated by canal water, they were also heavily dependent on groundwater. These are kind of the kind of disaggregated insights that we're looking into and that we hope will come out even further with more people using these data sets. So I'll switch off screen share, and do we want to go back to Vishan? Anything you want to say? Any topic I haven't covered yet, guys?
Could you guys talk a little bit about name standardization? I know Nikhil talked about it a little bit, but how bad were the names across? Because you had the codes, but if you use different data sets, like from NGOs and stuff, what were the issues around that?
So yeah, one limitation is that you need census codes in each case. If you want to bring in different datasets that are not census or not officially published by the government, just village names will not do. Because in each district you can have several different villages with the same name, the exact same name, the exact same spelling. So that would definitely create issues. So village codes are a necessity, but once you do have village codes, just plug in, take the data, plug it in, and you instantly get a map uh, that you can use. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Is this like a? Does this mean that when NGOs collect data, they should be using the village codes?
Preferably, yeah. Preferably, yeah.
Yeah, and Nisha, one more thing. Usually, at least the NGOs I have worked with mostly work at level. So they would be, in fact, just working on a few parts of a small tehsil or something like that. I don't know of any NGO which works on, say, couple of districts, all the villages in a couple of districts. So usually when they collect data, they know approximately where it is from. Even if they don't collect the village codes, they can still at least say, okay, in this particular district, in this particular taluka, this is the value. So at least that can help them get the exact correct village code.
It might be a good practice that we can promote, that whenever from the DataMeet side, whenever we are collecting such info, tagging the census 2011 codes, it could be a good practice that we should promote and suggest to everyone.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, this should become part of our best practices. You have to have your village codes in order to really be able to properly use this data. Kind of layering. So I think that's a really great thing to take out of this, and one of the other great things that you guys have been doing. Um,
So yeah, another thing that I also wanted to say is that we're even though we haven't really completed the work yet, we're still getting a lot of interest and curiosity from different groups working on different issues. So forest-related people who are working in forest rights, issues of that sort. There are two groups that I know of that have already shared the maps, the initial maps that we've come out with, and they're already interested in doing something about it and helping out and pitching in. There are also people in Nagpur who are interested in working on understanding villages in that district there. Another effort that we're definitely going to try to do, like Nikhil said, is figure out how we can get these maps done in Marathi and Marathi, yeah, mainly Marathi, but also the idea is not to just limit it to English, because at the end of the day, a lot of the people who are working outside of, say, the major towns, Pune, Mumbai, a lot of the people would require these maps in regional languages to have them be more effective. Those are things that are in the pipeline too.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Deb, do you have anything to add about kind of where the data came from, and what do you, think about this data being made open by the government more easily, or what kind of issues there would be around that?
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about that. So basically, I've been working with this kind of data on my job for the last 8 odd years, and it's always a pain to get hold of this kind of data. Earlier, I was working with the government, so we had access to this data from government sources, mainly the Survey of India. Thankfully, what has happened now is that the Bhuvan website has a lot of this data publicly available. In fact, they have a website for the called the Bhuvan Panchayat, which has this data in a web map. You can do a little bit of visualization, but not much beyond that, especially on the attributes, etc. And what I actually found while looking at some other data, they publicly say that you can use their servers for, say, land cover or the satellite data and so forth. And when I was looking at that, I found that even the village data was publicly accessible. So that's what we actually use to base this data on. And so it matches the data that is there on the Bhuvan website. In fact, when we first tried to work with this data, we found that the data was only for 2001 census. But then we reran the process, I think, around 2 months later. And looks like those guys were busy at work, and they had also updated the data to 2011. So that's why the latest data set that we have has both the 2001 census code as well as 2011 census code. So you can match it with both the data sets. And we are quite far from the kind of that is there in other countries, like, for example, in the US, where their Tiger shapefiles are pretty much open and pretty well structured, and they don't have so many issues when it comes to things like, say, as you were talking about, whether the names match or whether there's some mismatch in the districts or things like that. So hopefully, if this data was publicly available, if the government itself says that, okay, go ahead and use this data, this is where you can download it from. This is if the government authorizes as an or an authoritative data set is available, I'm sure it would be used by many NGOs, many other people for purposes which we can't even think about today. And because what happens is at the end of the day, when you're talking about development and economic growth and things like that, when you actually want to measure something, most of our data is at the census level, at the enumeration block level. And unfortunately, there's no good boundaries for that. Thankfully, we have something at the village level, which is one level above that. So this can be also used to identify where the government as well as the civil society needs to spend their time and effort. So they need more work and things. So yeah, hopefully, and we don't have to work so hard to correct the data and work on it and polish it and things like that.
Awesome. We have about 10 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat box. Do you guys want to go over what your next steps are, big asks? How should we take this forward? You know, this is amazing work, and we hope we can do it in every state. So how do we do that?
I'd say that it'd be a great help to get a lot of feedback from different people about the work that we're doing. Because right now we're still limited by whatever ideas we could come up with. And there are many components to this work, and there are many different directions in which it could go. Even Nikhil discovering this land records website of the government of Maharashtra, that's another whole different find, and that could take it could take this work to a whole different level. So there are many different people working with different organizations, different people also working who have worked on web maps, who have worked on desktop GIS, QGIS, and things like that, who might have feedback and who might want to play around with the maps themselves, even collaborate with and yeah, and see where that takes us. So yeah, I'd say definitely providing feedback. Anyone who wants to collaborate, definitely send us a mail. there was also another point that I was thinking of, which was, yeah, besides just the, it's definitely an appeal that besides just the technical guys, the programmers and people who are familiar with coding and programming, we're also looking to reach out to people who directly work on the ground, directly have a subject matter interest in this sort of data. And it's been our effort to try to simplify everything to the point where we make the code and everything technical just happen behind the scenes. That moves out of the way and people can just focus directly on the final product and asking uh, their questions of interest uh, from the data. So yeah, with that in mind, we're looking for contacts, people that you know who would be interested in exploring this data further. Um, yeah, that's what I had in mind.
Awesome. If anyone else have anything to add? Let me the dev.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to everybody that as in this data, while it's available and we have worked quite a bit on it, but if somebody else wants to replicate this in some other city or yeah, so if somebody else wants to replicate this on some other state, they would definitely require some ground level knowledge. So for example, when you try to actually play around with the data, we divided the data according to, okay, this is the city that I know, sorry, this is the district that I know about, or this is the taluka that I know about, and then we actually did the quality check. So if somebody else wants to do this on, say, Tamil Nadu, they better know something about the area, and that's when you can really work around with the data and improve it.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. You guys are amazing. This is great. Really interesting. I think we get a lot of insights from this. Hopefully we'll keep it going and take it to another state or all of them. Yeah, thank you. And I think we'll end it here. Let me just check one more time if there's any questions. No. Okay, great. And that's it. Thank you all. Have a good night.
You too. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Nisha. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.